When the HOA ordered Marcus to rip down his solar panels, they thought they were putting a stubborn homeowner in his place. What they didn't know was that Marcus's panels weren't just powering his home, they were keeping the lights on for the entire neighborhood. What started as a petty demand turned into a battle of dignity, justice, and truth that the HOA never saw coming. When the HOA ordered Marcus to rip down his solar panels, they thought they were putting a stubborn homeowner in his place. What they didn't know was that Marcus's panels weren't just powering his home, they were keeping the lights on for the entire neighborhood. What started as a petty demand turned into a battle of dignity, justice, and truth that the HOA never saw coming. Marcus Williams had lived in the neighborhood for over a decade, raising his daughter in the house he had poured his life savings into. He was known as a quiet, steady man who worked long hours and rarely asked anyone for help. His home stood proud, not because it was grander than others, but because it represented years of sacrifice and perseverance. For Marcus, every brick carried the memory of long shifts, every nail hammered into place spoke of determination. It was his haven, his proof that through resilience, dignity could thrive. 2 years earlier, Marcus had made a decision that shifted everything. With his background in electrical engineering, he knew the importance of sustainable living. He invested in solar panels, not just for his home, but in a way most neighbors didn't realize at first. His system was larger, designed not only to cut his own bills but also to share power with those around him. During blackouts, it was Marcus's system that silently powered nearby homes. Elderly neighbors who relied on medical equipment, single mothers who couldn't afford skyrocketing electric bills, families with children studying late at night, all unknowingly benefited from his quiet generosity. Marcus never broadcasted it, he believed true service didn't need applause. The HOA board, however, saw things differently. They prided themselves on rules, regulations, and appearances. They wanted every house to look uniform, every lawn to match a certain shade of green, every homeowner to follow their authority without question. For years, Marcus had abided by their policies, even when some seemed trivial. But the solar panels, those sleek black rectangles gleaming under the sun, became their new target. One afternoon, Marcus received a formal letter. The words were sharp, almost cold. Your solar panels are in violation of HOA aesthetic guidelines. You are hereby ordered to remove them within 30 days or face daily fines and potential legal action. Marcus read the letter twice, then a third time. His heart sank, not just because of the threat but because he knew what those panels meant, not only for his family but for the whole neighborhood. He decided to approach the board directly. At the next meeting, Marcus arrived early, sitting quietly as members shuffled papers and whispered among themselves. When his turn came to speak, he stood with calm dignity. These panels are more than just a choice for me, he explained. They save energy, reduce costs, and support sustainability. They don't diminish the neighborhood, they strengthen it. But before he could finish, one board member cut in sharply. Rules are rules, Mr. Williams. Our community has standards. We can't make exceptions for one homeowner. Another added, if everyone did whatever they wanted, this place would look chaotic. Marcus felt the sting of their dismissiveness. He looked around the room, searching for understanding in the faces of his neighbors, but most looked down or away, unwilling to speak. A heaviness pressed on his chest, not just from their rejection but from the quiet reminder of something he had lived with his whole life, the feeling of being seen as out of place, in spaces he had every right to belong. That night, he went home, sat on his porch, and thought about his father. His father had often told him, son, dignity isn't something you ask for. It's something you live by, even when others try to strip it away. Those words echoed in his mind. He knew he couldn't simply comply, not when it meant erasing the good his panels had brought to so many. As days passed, fines began arriving in his mailbox. Each envelope carried threats that grew harsher. The HOA was escalating, determined to bend him into submission. Marcus kept his composure, but his daughter, Naomi, noticed his shoulders carrying more weight than usual. Daddy, why don't they want the panels? She asked one evening as they stood in the yard. He knelt down beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Sometimes, baby, people fight what they don't understand. But what's right will always shine through, just like the sun. What Marcus didn't know was that his quiet battle was about to stir something in the hearts of his neighbors. Mrs. Green, an elderly widow down the street, remembered the night a storm knocked out power across the city. While the block sat in darkness, Her home stayed warm and her oxygen machine kept running, all because of Marcus's solar system. She had never forgotten his kindness. Another neighbor, the Johnson family, knew their children had studied through many outages thanks to the energy Marcus provided. Slowly, word began to spread. While the HOA painted Marcus as a man defying rules, the truth whispered through living rooms and kitchens. Marcus wasn't just looking out for himself, he had been looking out for all of them. And yet, the HOA board continued their pursuit. They scheduled another meeting, this time with harsher consequences on the table. They planned to shame Marcus publicly, hoping to break his resolve. But what they didn't realize was that Marcus had reached his breaking point, not of surrender, but of silence. The night before the meeting, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with documents spread out before him. He had kept records, proof of how his panels had been helping not only his household but others. But more than papers, he had something stronger, the quiet testimony of lives touched by his choice. When the day came, the room was full. The HOA board sat stiffly at the front, papers stacked in neat piles, their faces stern with authority. Marcus took his seat near the back, watching as neighbors trickled in. Some looked curious, some cautious, and some nodded at him with a silent encouragement. The chairwoman cleared her throat. "We are here to address the noncompliance of homeowner Marcus Williams. Despite repeated warnings and fines, he has failed to remove his solar panels. At this point, we must consider legal action to protect the standards of our community." She turned toward Marcus. "Mr. Williams, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Marcus rose slowly, his presence calm yet powerful. His voice carried across the room, steady and unwavering. "Yes, I do. For weeks, you've told me my panels don't belong here. That they disrupt the look of the neighborhood. That rules matter more than reason. But let me tell you what these panels really mean." He paused, scanning the room. "Last winter, when the storm knocked out the grid, whose houses still had heat and power? When families feared for their children in the dark, whose lights stayed on? These panels didn't just serve me, they served all of you. Quietly, without fanfare, without asking for payment. Some of you didn't know. But some of you do. And tonight, I think it's time we all speak the truth." For a moment, silence held the room. Then Mrs. Green, frail but determined, stood from her seat. Her voice trembled, but it carried weight. "He's telling the truth. My oxygen machine would have failed without his power. Marcus saved my life. You call it noncompliance, I call it compassion." Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Johnson family rose next, their children standing beside them. "Our kids studied by those lights when the grid went out. We never said anything because Marcus never bragged about it. But we won't stay quiet now. This man has carried us through more than one blackout." One by one, voices rose. Families, single parents, neighbors who had felt the quiet reach of Marcus's generosity, all stood in his defense. The room that had once been a place of judgment turned into a chorus of gratitude. The board shifted uncomfortably, their authority crumbling with every word spoken. One member attempted to regain control. "This is irrelevant. Rules are rules. Community image is at stake." But his words were drowned out by the voices of the people. For the first time, Marcus wasn't standing alone. The community that had once stayed silent now stood as his shield. Marcus waited, then lifted his voice once more. "I never asked for recognition. I never asked for repayment. I only asked to be allowed the dignity to do what is right, for my family, for my neighbors, for this community. You say my panels break the rules. I say they bring us light, in more ways than one. Tell me, which one truly upholds the values of this neighborhood?" The chairwoman, visibly rattled, realized the tide had turned. The authority they had wielded so freely had been dismantled, not by defiance, but by truth. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "The board will withdraw its demand for removal." Relief swept through the room, but it was more than relief, it was pride. Neighbors embraced Marcus, some with tears, others with words of thanks they had held back for too long. For once, the HOA was forced to bow not to rules, but to justice. That evening, as Marcus walked home with Naomi at his side, the streetlights glowing faintly above them, he felt something deeper than victory. His daughter looked up at him, her eyes bright. "Daddy, you didn't just keep the lights on. You showed everyone what's right." He smiled, resting his hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes, baby, it takes a storm to see who truly brings the light." In the weeks that followed, Marcus's panels remained, untouched and respected. The fines ceased. The board, though reluctant, had no choice but to acknowledge what the community had declared. Neighbors greeted him with warmth, no longer silent but open in their gratitude. He had become more than just a homeowner, he had become a symbol. For Marcus, the fight had never been about winning against the HOA. It was about holding on to dignity, about refusing to let prejudice and rigid control strip away the good he had worked so hard to build. It was about standing firm, not only for himself but for everyone who had quietly relied on his strength. And though he never sought recognition, the truth could no longer be hidden. Marcus Williams wasn't just a man with solar panels. He was the reason his neighborhood thrived when darkness came. The HOA had tried to silence him, but in the end, they only illuminated his true power. Because real power isn't found in control or rules. Real power is found in the light we share with others, in the dignity we refuse to surrender, and in the courage to stand tall when others try to make us small. Marcus's story spread beyond his street, resonating with anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong, anyone who had ever been asked to shrink themselves to fit someone else's mold. It was a reminder that even in the face of authority, truth and justice can shine brighter than any rulebook. And so, the panels stayed. The neighborhood's lights burned on. And Marcus, quiet, steady Marcus, walked forward knowing that he had kept more than electricity flowing. He had kept dignity alive,